So in this video, I want to talk about the CrossFit Spectrum and the three different, very distinct types of CrossFitters that you will see. This spectrum includes the competitive CrossFitter, so the elite, the normal CrossFitter, the person who comes through the doors and just wants to live a higher quality of life, and then the person in the middle who is a normal person but wants to do some competitions. I also want to talk about what training would be appropriate for each one of these athletes, how they're all CrossFit, but they are different iterations of the same program. In addition to that, I kind of want to talk about a new definition of CrossFit, which is not new. It's just something that I think hasn't been articulated quite this way and will help clarify some things for people misunderstanding what CrossFit really is. Now, before we get into any of this, we kind of have to talk about what makes CrossFit CrossFit. And here's something that might be confusing to you right at the start. CrossFit is not about the program. CrossFit is an outcome-based program where we care more about the effect of the program than we do about what the program is. So we care what CrossFit gives you more than we care about what you're doing. And this is where I want to kind of define what CrossFit is a little bit differently than you may have heard in the past. CrossFit has a definition that they give at their seminar, which is constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity. So within that, there's a bunch of different ways you could view that. Constant variance means there's always going to be things switching up. Functional movements is a very distinct class of movements that are high power. And then executed at high intensity is always talking about a high intensity relative to the movements. But within that, you have three different variables: variance, intensity, functionality. And you get to mix these variables up in different ways to achieve the program. So there's not one cut and dry CrossFit program. It's more of a methodology that you can kind of tinker with. Now, what CrossFit wants you to do with that program is use those variables in a bunch of different ways to achieve a result. And the result is actually a pretty specific result if you understand CrossFit. The result is fitness, but not a nebulous form of fitness, not like a cover of Men's Fitness magazine, which is all about abs, or a world's fittest man in Ronaldo or whatever it is, because he can run on a soccer field. Like, fitness as a measurable, observable, repeatable thing, which is work capacity across broad time and modal domains. The ability to do work, so capacity to work capacity, across broad time, across any time frame, and modal domains, any activity, whether it be snowboarding or weightlifting. And what we're saying is fitness is your ability to do all of those things. Somebody who has a higher fitness level will be able to do more power across more activities and more time frames. Somebody who has a lower fitness level will be able to do less power across less time domains and less activities. They're going to be more specialized in whatever that they do. Now, the reason that this definition is important is because it's allowing us to live a higher quality of life. If we break down work capacity across broad time modal domains even further, we can look at it this way. Can I do what I want, any activity, at whatever level that I want, work capacity, for however long I want, time domains? So essentially, can I live the highest quality of life that I want to live? That's your fitness, and that's what we chase as CrossFitters. And the program that gives us that the quickest, most efficiently across the most number of people, we're actually going to call CrossFit. That's our gist of what we do. And when people argue about what the program is, they should be arguing about what the outcome is. And as long as it's achieving this outcome, that's a CrossFit program. Now, here's where I want to apply a slightly different definition to CrossFit than constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity. What I'm going to say is not, I think, new, but it's just a different articulation of it. CrossFit is the program that allows an individual to achieve the highest quality of fitness, so ability to do whatever you want, whatever level that you want, for however long you want, for any individual in the least amount of time with the highest rate of success of any other program. Now, within that definition, there will be variance. There will be people who need to focus in different areas to achieve their high quality of life. There will be people who need to do more volume or less volume to achieve their highest quality of life. There will be people who need to do more intensity or less intensity to achieve their highest quality of life. But CrossFit is the program that will get them there the quickest. Now, are there other programs that will achieve a high quality of life for people? Yeah, but I would argue that CrossFit is the one that's going to get them there the quickest and will continue to grow with them to allow them to reach their potential when delivered effectively. That's what we're going to work from as a framework for what CrossFit is and what the goal is. Now let's go into the actual point of this video, the spectrum of CrossFit. We've got three very distinct characters: the elite level competitor, the normal CrossFitter looking to live a high quality of life, and the person who's smack dab in between, who's a normal person who wants to compete. How these people differ is by their goal and what they're trying to achieve, which means their program needs to change slightly in order to achieve those results. Let's first talk about the elite level competitor. The elite level competitor in CrossFit has deviated away from living a high quality of life. What they are trying to do is treat CrossFit like a sport. And if you look at the goal of most sports, it's to be dominant over the people that you are competing against. So the goal for an elite level CrossFitter would be to be dominant over the individuals they compete against in the sport of CrossFit, which would be weightlifting and gymnastics and running and throwing and climbing and everything in between, and having some semblance of unknown and unknowable so they can apply themselves to any endeavor that they face. Now, within this, there are required some changes in your programming. It's still the program that we talked about, constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity, but there's a couple things we know we have to do in order to be dominant over our fellow man in things. One, we need to be able to handle a higher level of volume. So the amount of workouts CrossFit competitors do in a row, in a day, in a competition is not indicative of a high quality of life. It is more about, can you handle this level of fatigue? So it's stressing your energy systems in a way that is unique to the competition of CrossFit. So they need to be able to handle volume. And in order to handle volume, you need to train volume. So they will need to be doing a higher level of volume. They will also need to have a higher level of skill, because in the case of CrossFit, there are some higher skill movements, things like snatches and cleans and handstand push-ups and all of these other things. They need to have such a refined level of ability in them that not only can they do them, but they can do them at the highest possible ability with the most amount of efficiency. And the reason for that is so they can dominate their fellow man. So they have to do those things more often in order to be able to have a high capacity there. So a CrossFit competitor is looking for dominance. So they will require higher volume. They will spend more time under heavier loads so they can continue to push their thresholds further and further and further out. They will spend more time working the nuance of technique so that they can be as efficient as possible and use the least amount of energy to do the most amount of work. And their intensity will be at a threshold or a little bit beyond more often because they need to be constantly growing in order to be pushing those boundaries. Now, when you do these things together over and over and over again, and the main difference here than a normal training program is going to be about the volume, you have a higher likelihood of injury because the amount of stuff that you're doing and what you're requiring from your body is so much that you're kind of bordering that line of always being hurt. But at the elite level of any sport, you're going beyond what's healthy and into a realm that is unnecessary for quality of life, but necessary for domination over your fellow man. And that's what CrossFit competitors do. They increase the volume and they refine the mechanics of everything that they're doing to be as efficient as possible. That requires time, that requires risk, that requires effort in a way that normal humans should not do, and could very easily lead to burnout and injury and everything in between. But that's just the nature of high-level competition. It's still CrossFit. It's just turned up to go beyond quality of life and then into domination. That's our spectrum on this side. Those things are what a training program should look like. Higher volume, more riding of the threshold more often, regardless of how you're feeling, more refinement of higher level skill things, and overall more exposure to the sport of CrossFit. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is the person who wants to live a higher quality of life, and they've chosen CrossFit as the program to get them there for whatever reason. Now, I personally believe that CrossFit is the best program to allow people to live a higher quality of life, especially when it's delivered by a great coach. The difference in this person to this person is quite vast. This person's looking for domination. This person's looking to live the highest quality of life for them. Now, whatever that means, does this mean they need to get leaner? Does it mean they need to get stronger? Does it mean they need to jump higher, run faster, do more gymnastics? It's just what's the possible potential for an individual. And based off of what they're coming in with, they're going to need a slightly different thing. So if someone comes in as an elite level gymnast, that person doesn't need a ton of time working gymnastics. That person is likely not that strong. So to round themselves out, they would probably need more exposure to weightlifting movements rather than rebounding movements. And don't hear me wrong when I say that they're not that strong. It's relative to their gymnastics. The point of a CrossFitter is to be well-rounded. And when you come in as a specialist, you are not well-rounded. You are by design a specialist. You're really good at one thing, you lack capacity in others. Now that was an interesting example because that was somebody who was great at something else who came in. Most people walking in off the streets are terrible all around. And when I say terrible, I mean unfit. They lack capacity in strength in body weight movements, they lack cardiorespiratory endurance, they lack dynamic ability, they lack strength overall in their capacity. Like they're just a ball of clay, like a mushy person. And I'm not talking about physically, I'm talking about what they're capable of. Most human beings that walk around these days do not live a life where it requires physicality of them. So they come in as this clean slate. With this athlete, we do a good basic CrossFit program. One workout a day. That workout varies and changes. It has short ones, long ones. It's got high volume, low volume, heavy ones, light ones, everything in between there, so that as they expose themselves to all the modalities of fitness, all the different types of movements and mechanics and all of the other things, the same thing that they do over here in the advanced space, but just at a way pulled back level, once a day, throughout the rest of their lives, they slowly push the boundaries of their ability in all the areas further out. Now, what's required over here is not volume, the opposite of volume. It's just exposure, and then in any given day, we're really checking in with the person to see where they're at and what they're capable of. And then we're trying to, on every single day, just meet that or push a little bit beyond it, because that's the nature of training. You do what you're capable of, and a little bit beyond it, you stress the organism of the human, and the human organism goes, I don't want to be stressed like that again, so I'm going to get slightly better. You do this with cardio, you do this with strength, you do this with plyometrics, you do this with twisting and throwing and running and rowing and everything you can possibly imagine. And the goal with this is so that as you do this at the person's level, you meet them where they're at over and over and over again, their level starts to push out. And as their level pushes further and further out, they live a higher and a higher quality of life. Because when one of their friends comes by and say, hey, can you help me move? They say, yeah, sure, no problem. When their kid says, hey, dad, do you want to go play baseball? They say, sure. Or when you say, hey, mom, can you carry my son down the stairs? And grandma says, absolutely, I can. Because what they're doing in their training is they're always working and pushing at their own ability a little bit further out every day over years and years and years to where they can just say yes to life. And the big differences in training are less overall volume, and you're really checking in every day. Hey, where are you at psychologically? What's your sleep like? What's your food like? What's your life like outside the gym? And then where are you at physically today? What's going on? What's little aches and pains do we have going on? What's an injury versus I'm sore? Where are you at? And we're gonna meet you there, and we're gonna help you out with whatever that is. That's the individual who walks into the gym. And you expose them to a bunch of different stuff, so you get good at a bunch of different stuff. And people will fight this and they'll say, hey, you know, over here, if you just do a bunch of different stuff, you're never gonna be truly great at one thing. Yes, you're right. If you are a strength aficionado and you're like, oh, we love the strength, you're not gonna just get good at strength. You will get stronger, but you won't just get good at strength. You'll also get good at gymnastics, and you'll also get good at cardiorespiratory endurance, and you'll also get good at short things and long things and medium things and moving your body through space and mixing modalities and metabolic conditioning, but you'll get a higher quality of life. That's the person over here, looking for the highest quality of life in the minimum amount of time. And the big difference in training is that you don't push them too far. You meet them where they're at. Those are the ends of the spectrum. Too far, meet where you're at. Now, smack bang in the middle is this other person. This person who is a normal person looking for a high quality of life, but they have competitive aspirations. Not that they want to go at the games, but they want to compete in maybe local events, or they just find it fun to do so. This person's an interesting one because they need to be doing the same thing over here, meeting themselves where they're at and not doing too much volume because they have to still live their normal lives. They're not specialized over here where they can sacrifice everything for their own, dominance of fellow man, but they do need to spend more time doing higher level complexity things, a slightly higher level of volume, and they will likely have to go a little bit harder, a little bit more often if they want to be competent at local endeavors. So this person is riding the threshold of doing too much almost all the time because they have to balance the rest of their lives. And this is where a lot of CrossFitters find themselves. They think it's really fun to compete, and it is, but there's a balance that needs to be struck there. And I see a lot of people who are in this middle zone. They go, hey, I'm gonna go really hard, I'm gonna do my stuff, and then I burn out. And then they're like, it's CrossFit's fault. It's your fault as a human being. Anything that happens to you, for the most part, you can take responsibility for. But specifically in this case, you did too much. You took on board more than was capable. You tried to do something that was not within your capacity and it went too far. And you can take responsibility for that and walk back a little bit. And that's okay. There's no issue with that. We do this all the time in almost all areas of life. Take on more than we can handle and we have to work it back. But this person's training needs to look a little different than this person. This person can go softer more often because it's about the high quality of life. This person knows that they're putting themselves at the risk. This person needs to be really heavily educated on what they're doing and why. And it's first and foremost, there's a hierarchy with this person of consistency. Are they consistent? Once they're consistent, then we need to ratchet in diet. Once they're consistent and have diet, then we can start to push training partners and intensity levels higher. So we're asking more from them every single day. And then once those three things are met, then we can maybe increase volume just a little bit to handle the natures of competition. And I see that thing get skewed with people. People aren't consistent. They do too heavy loads. They don't look at their diet. They don't look at their outside stressors. They do too heavy, too much volume, too much complexity too soon, and they hurt. And then they go, CrossFit hurt me. You hurt you. This is the majority of people. This is a very, very, very small percent who are here. This is a good chunk in the middle who need to understand what this program is, and you as coaches can help them out with that. Now, obviously, this is a CrossFit Spectrum. There's not just 1, 2, or 3. People are somewhere on this. So your goal as coaches, your goal as people out there educating people on it is to recognize either where you're at, take responsibility for it, and if you want to go to the other place, know that there's going to be some switch-ups and do those intelligently. Your job as coaches is to meet people where they're at and see what they want. Highest quality of life, there's more longevity associated here. You need to meet them where they're at every single day. Want to aspire to compete? Look at the hierarchy of how they're training and make sure that that's in line before you start pushing them. Over here, let them know there's some sacrifices that are going to be made and they really need to refine in all regards to dominate their fellow man. Anywho, I hope that helps some of you understand the spectrum of CrossFit.